Chapter, 6:30 p.m. Tuesday, March 30th, 2021. Ms. Milton, roll call, please.
Mr. Orris,
Here.
Mr. Slocum, Mr. Burway,
Present.
Ms. Nichols,
Here.
Ms. Pavano, is Sandy here? Not yet.
Not
Mr.
yet.
Talbot,
Here.
Mr. Veliver,
Here.
Mr. Walsh.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Milton. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first item on our agenda is discussion and possible approval of dispatchers collective bargaining agreement where you're not going into executive session. With that, I'll turn it over to Ms. Nichols.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a resolution to bring forth, and it goes as followed. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves Resolution 033021-1. Be it resolved that the Town Council approves the agreement between the Town of Cheshire and the UPSEU Local 424, Unit 101, Cheshire PD dispatchers for the term July 1, 2020 to June 30, 2024, as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Talbot. Back to you, Ms. Nichols.
Okay, well, this is one of the final settlements that we have for union contracts. And as we discussed previously, this is the dispatchers have agreed. I'm just going to summarize the details because we've discussed them before, but they are accepting a 2.75 wage increase with no retroactive to July of 2020, but with a $750 lump sum payment on signing. And for the following 3 years, the wage increase will be 2.5%. They've agreed to an increase in the premium share of 1% per year for the beginning at 10% this year and going up to 13% in the third year. They are contributing 17, 18, 19, 20% toward their health network. They are taking advantage of a health incentive, which we've offered as a life insurance that's equal to their salary, and a longevity increase of 0.25% beginning on July 1st of 2021. So there are 8 members of this dispatcher union. There were 9. Unfortunately, we lost 1, and that position is being eliminated or changed to a different title, so it will not be in this union going forward. So there are 8 members, and the 4-year wage cost is estimated to be about $25,600. So we're happy with that settlement. If you have any other questions, there's a lot of detail in the paperwork that you were
Great.
provided.
Thank you, Ms. Nichols. Any questions or comments from members of the council? Okay, seeing none, I think this is pretty straightforward. We spent a lot of time on these contracts. We got to a point that I think was very fair, as was noted in the documents we received, that the information provided by CCM indicates that what we negotiated is at or below what other similar settlements are occurring out in the marketplace. So I think that just underscores the fact that we worked hard. Obviously, the 2.75 increase on an annualized basis is much less than that, correct, Sean? I don't know what the exact number is, but I don't want the public to think that that's a 2.75 full first year raise. It is not. When you annualize that back, it's something less than the actual, probably 2.25% as well. In reality, it's a 2.25% increase for years 2, 3, and 4, and something less in the first year. And I think, we do appreciate the fact that they allowed us to push for a larger reimbursement on the medical insurance reimbursement. I think that's worth noting. And I think it's a very fair contract in light of the marketplace. So thank you, Ms. Nichols, for that summary. And unless there's any other questions from members of the council, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes unanimously. Are those that are here, please note that we have 3 council members that are not in attendance. Ms. Milton.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, we're going to move on to our proposed fiscal year 21-22 operating budget, annual capital budget, 5-year capital expenditure plan to discuss social services, library, arts place planning, and economic development. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our budget chair, Mr. David Bowery.
Thank you, Mayor Orris. Good evening, everybody. We have another workshop on our budget tonight, our 4th one, and looks as though we have quite a few interesting departments to review. Mr. Kimball, I don't see Michelle on here, so are we gonna just
we're gonna
is this kind of status quo, or?
no, if it's okay with you, she has a conflict and will be joining a little after 7. So we thought if we could take up
Fine.
library and or arts place first, that would be
Absolutely.
best
Yeah.
for us. We could.
All right. Well, I guess we'll just go in order then. So it will be library. So Beth, our library director, if you would like to give us a little opening statement or something, and then we may be interested to hear, so we can then talk about some of the questions we might have.
Sure, great. Thank you, and good evening, Chairman Orris and Budget Chairman Bowery and the members of the council. It's great to be back before you again. Can't believe it's already come around. The library budget starts on page 157 in the horizontal book, and overall we're showing a 1.16% increase. Salaries, we have a 2.91% increase due to contractual increases factored in. And in the current fiscal year, we had reduced the overall employee positions from 30 to 24 by eliminating the 6-page positions, which was a total of 114 hours per week. That work has now been incorporated over this year into the hours and tasks of the remaining employees. So we are not asking for those page positions back. And further, the town manager's budget eliminated the salaries for Sunday hours at a cost reduction of $21,308. Non-salary expenditures, we are showing a 7.39% decrease. Now that I've been here about 2.5 years, I have a much better idea of where we really need to be each year based on historical actuals and what I have seen. So we had a reduction in line 5406. That was due to reduced fees for our membership in the LCI consortium. They had an audit and redid their formula, and luckily we turned out having a decrease. We had a $2,400 increase in our 5403 line due to increased maintenance fees for our online catalog system, and also adding in the annual fee for the platform for the digital book scanner. Again, town manager's budget took an additional $20,000 reduction from our 204 line, the library materials, and our 5502 professional development was reduced by $1,500. Projected revenue, I'm again assuming no income from fines. I'm hoping to stay fine free. That's been very well received by the public this year, and we've not seen a significant increase in books being returned late due to that. In fact, we feel we have gotten materials returned that maybe wouldn't have been if people had to pay fines. In the vertical book on pages 72 and 73 are my fiscal year 1920 statistics. I'm not going to go through all of them just in the interest of time, but I did want to highlight that during this last year, we saw a 17% increase in the number of residents who have library cards. So we went from 11,612 library card holders to 13,533. So that's great. And I think a lot of that had to do with needing to be able to get online to access materials while we were closed. I will say, though, in comparison to towns of similar size, based on our statistics, we're still above the average. Library visits per capita were at 5.3 versus 4.18, which equates to 66.4 visits per service hour versus about 52. And our borrowing per capita is 10.09 versus 6.21, which is about 125 borrows per service hour versus 74. So we're doing well comparatively to towns of similar size. What we've been doing during this challenging year since we came back into the building in June, and we started curbside on June 23rd, and then in-person visits started on September 16th. So these statistics run from July 2020 to February 2021. We've provided 4,471 curbside pickups of library materials. 583 visits to homebound patrons, and that delivered 1,457 items. We did add about 10 new people to that service due to the pandemic. We offered 199 virtual programs that were viewed by 3,196 participants. We started a really popular reader's advisory email service called Matchbook, and so to date we have answered 180 requests. What should I read next? So that's been great. Our digital downloads, ebooks, e-audiobooks are up 77% over same period last year. And Ancestry, because the service allowed people to access it from home instead of just in the library, is up 396%. So everybody's looking for their family members while they're in lockdown. And I also wanted to mention that we hosted 41 virtual meetings for Cheshire community groups. So even though our meeting rooms were closed, we allowed the local community groups to use one of our Zoom accounts. And one of our staff members was the host and set up the meetings. So we were able to continue to hold community groups, even though it was done virtually. So they were still able to meet and not have to take on the expense of trying to get a Zoom account. They used ours. That was great. But the last thing I really wanted to talk to you about tonight before we can get into the questions is you're here to make a financial decision about what to spend money on. And so I wanted to just give you a little bit of information about the value of the library. And I am talking about the financial value. There are qualitative things I can tell you about the value of the library that we hear every day, but you're here to make a financial decision. So to that end, the American Library Association has a tool called a value use calculator. And basically what they do is they put a price on the things that we give to the patrons, like if they borrow a book, if they use a computer, if they have a reference question. So for example, the average adult book costs about $17. And the computer use per hour, if you went to a FedEx or a Kinko's, would be about $12 an hour. So they calculate all those numbers, and then you simply take your use statistics and multiply it by that number. So for example, the homebound services I was talking about earlier, where we provided 1,457 adult books, that's a value of $24,769 to our residents that they didn't have to spend. Curbside, which was, there's about 5 items per bag. So at the average cost per item, because it's a mixed group of items, DVDs, books, is about $11. So that total came out to $245,905 of value over the course of the service. So then I took our 1920 statistics and I picked a few of the things that people do most often. So materials borrowed, the programs that they attended virtually, computer use, database searches, and reference assistance. And all of the numbers that relate to that use totaled $5,852,106 of value. So if you take our initial investment of the budget for last year of $1,758,997, that's a 233% return on investment. So I think you can rest assured that the money that does go into the library is coming back to the patrons in significant returns on that investment. So finally, I just wanted to mention that going forward, what are our plans? Certainly it's been challenging. I think we're all looking forward to getting back to normal service. So by the beginning of the fiscal year, I hope that based on health metrics and where we are with the pandemic, and also the fact that my staff will be fully vaccinated, that we can return to full hours. We'll be able to restore some study and reading tables, which we don't have right now. We are already planning outdoor programs this summer, partnering with Parks and Recreation, so maximizing efficiencies and partnerships with another department. We're going to offer concerts in addition to the Bartlam Park Beats concerts, movies, story times in the park, and a story walk again. We will continue virtual programming and virtual community meetings until space is available and it is safe to do so in person. But that is the plan, and that is what I had to present as my opening, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, certainly it's interesting tact to show us the dollar amount, because it really, and it's accurate. It's if this was something that was paid for, like delivery of the groceries and all these other services and whatnot, there would be more of a cost to it than what we're getting. And I think you do and always have provided an excellent value to our residents. I can't say it's the most used municipal building that I attend, but I do have a card. I pull it out and show you. And it doesn't get a lot of use, but I'm there, and I like to check. I really do appreciate all the programs that you offer also. And I think that's, and I know it doesn't necessarily come just from you, because the Friends of the Library pay for a lot of that and sponsor it with you, but it wouldn't happen if it wasn't for you and for your staff and your people working so hard. So I think the wonderful volunteers that you've built up through the Friends and the things that they are able to augment the budget with, the cultural events and things are wonderful. They really do help make Cheshire the wonderful place it is. It's different than many other towns. I really don't have a whole lot of questions. It's a pretty straightforward budget. You assimilated in the changes in the staffing, as you mentioned early on. You did take a recommended $20,000 reduction in what I've always called the materials budget, and it's putting it back to the level of a couple years ago, but maybe with the items not having been as used and being lost because of the lost year, if you will, it's probably, my guess is not the worst thing in the world, and will still have us have an excellent library. So I have nothing but nice things to say about your facility and all the programs you offer. Are there other council members who have questions? I saw Mr. Talbot, and then I saw Mr. Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Beth, thank you. Appreciate the presentation tonight. One of the questions I had written down early on, anticipating our meeting tonight, right after the books came out, was what was the increase in ebook usage due to the pandemic? And you answered that tonight at 77%, which I'm not surprised by. I guess the question though is, do you anticipate this to be a continuing trend now that people have gotten more used to ebooks out of, being forced to? And do you see that, continuing even after you're fully opened and people are comfortable returning to your facility?
Yes, that's a great question. Thank you. I actually was thinking about this earlier today. I do think that is what we're going to see. What we saw when we first shut down and people realized that the only way to get materials was digitally, was a discovery from people who had not used the service or maybe were reluctant to use the service because a lot of people still prefer a print book. But I think what a lot of people have discovered is they're not mutually exclusive, and that there's a lot of stuff out there. Ebooks are great too if you have vision difficulties and you're reviewing it on an iPad. You can make the print a lot bigger. Or you can listen to audiobooks, which also helps, for in the same realm. I listen to them on my commute. My mother listens to them. She is legally blind now. So, I think people have finally discovered how great they can be. So I do see that use continuing, and which is great. We actually invest a lot of money in our ebooks and e-audiobooks. They cost a lot more than traditional print books. I can buy about 3 print books for the cost of one e-audiobook. They're about $67 a piece, and the ebooks are about $29 a piece. And unfortunately, with that model, based on the way ebook vendors work, we don't own the material. So we either get them for about 52 to 26 borrows, or we get them for 2 years and then they're gone, and we have to rebuy them if we want to have that title still, which is different than the print book model. So, maintaining that materials line, we did move money that we would have spent on print books that we knew we weren't going to be able to circulate, and move that into the digital collection towards the end of last year, and come up with some new programs for people to increase the ability to get and have the books faster through that service. But yes, I do think that trend will continue.
And you answered my follow-up, which was, what's the cost effectiveness of both media? So thank you. I appreciate it.
Sure. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Talbot. Mr. Walsh, and then I saw Ms. Pavano after you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Beth. I believe last year at this meeting, when you mentioned that the library had the online ancestry.com service. I jumped all over that because I love looking up Ancestry, and I use it throughout the year. So it is a great service, because otherwise you're going to be paying a lot of money for it. If people have looked that up, it could be costing you $100 a year or more, and it's a great service. So I appreciate that, and I think more and more people need to find out what services you do have. I think we need to get that word out there too. I just had a quick question though from last year. Did you notice? I mean, typically the age groups. Do you keep track of age groups that use the library? I mean, is it typically the school-bound kids are one group, and then the senior citizens? And I mean, how many in between that started using it? Did you see a large increase during last year?
I don't know that number off the top of my head, and it's kind of hard to track, unless we look at, birth dates in our circulation system. But I don't know that I've noticed a difference in an increase in particular age groups using the library. Certainly when we reopened to the public, I saw more of the seniors coming back. And we haven't had the kids in during this time because they really can't gather in groups and do their homework and hang out like they normally do, which has been very sad for me. I miss seeing them here. So I'm not sure I can answer that question accurately for you.
That's fine. I was just curious. And I said the other thing I'm sure that's being missed by a lot are the music things you had there and the speakers and everything else. And those were all great. And hopefully we could see those coming back sooner than later. But I appreciate what all you guys are doing there. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Ms. Pavano?
Yes, I noticed that you helped assist the seniors with navigating the vaccine system, and I think that's a wonderful thing that you did. I was just curious to how many seniors actually took advantage of this. You were there for them. I was just kind of curious at a number.
I don't know. We got many calls. We helped, but we were part of also the senior center staff helping and the human services staff helping. Basically, when we had the initial 2 clinics open, that's when we started getting a lot of calls from seniors. So I know that staff. I was standing in the children's room when we started getting children's office area. And we had 5 phones ringing almost nonstop. So I don't know exactly how many people we were able to help. We didn't track that, but it was quite a number.
Well, thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Yeah, in that regard, Beth, didn't your staff also help social services in the wellness calls and the checking on the seniors during the height of the COVID time as well?
We did. That was one of the ways we had staff working from home. And they helped the senior center with calls home to the seniors.
Yeah, so that was terrific to step in and help where it was needed. Again, the sense of community that your library helps to bring and your people work in other areas is great. Do I see other councilmen? Ms. Nichols?
Yeah, I would like to interrupt here and ask the council members, as you listen to all of these people, and I know we're going to hear from Joanne, so I don't want to steal her thunder, but I think that we in Cheshire are very fortunate to have departments, all of them, library, park and rec, arts place, senior center, all of the fire department, police department, who are dedicated to doing their job well. And I think as a town council person, and I'm going to be nudging all of you in the next few months, I think it's important that we do a better job of marketing those services to our residents in a way that is less formal than these types of meetings and more interactive with their emotional responses and their personal interactions, because it really matters if you can get to the library and have help with your computer, or you can take an online program, or you can go to Arts Place, or the fire department shows up. Those are the things that people in this community are more than happy to understand why we fund these things, because they directly affect them in a way that affects their everyday life. And we do a great job at doing financial forecasts, and we do a great job at budgeting, but we also need to let the community know of the people, Beth was just talking about it, all the things the people do in the library, all the people at Arts Place, all the firemen, all the human service workers. And I will be bringing to you, hopefully at very, very minimal involvement from financial involvement by the council, but a program to highlight some of those departments in a more meaningful way. So remember what she's telling you about all the things they did and the phone calls and all of that. And as each department comes to us with their particular accomplishments, I'm going to ask you to remember that in a week or two and come forward with a plan that I'd like to see adopted. End of my speech. Thank you, Beth. It's great.
Thank you. If I could just add to that, we come before you once a year for this purpose, but I would be happy to come back anytime to talk less formally about our services and give you the information maybe you would need to do that work. So yeah.
We'll be in
and
touch.
bring any members of my staff that could also help enlighten, the residents and council about what we do.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Mayor Orris, you have.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Borwe. And this is a very straightforward budget, so I don't really have many questions, but I do have a couple of comments. And this is really just kind of getting into my thought process with this year's budget in total. And it's not just the library department. Obviously, members of our community and our businesses are struggling, so it's incumbent on us to really craft, I believe, as lean a budget as possible, to do more with less. We've been asking each department to do that, and I certainly think as I look through our budget and the library, I'm looking to continue to do that. So this is a very labor-intensive department, as you can see. Most of the budget is really in labor. And so one of the things that I'm going to be looking for is, how we do more with less. And so, I want to make sure that I feel very comfortable that we know the services we're looking to provide through, in this case, the library, and that the labor side matches the services we're looking to provide through the library, and that we're not morphing into something beyond what we all believe the library should be. So I think that's important. And again, I'm not trying to be negative at all. I think you do a wonderful job in the library, and you serve so many members of our community. You are a huge asset and one of the big reasons Cheshire is such a great community. But nonetheless, we still have to be fiscally prudent as we're looking at budgets. And I think we would all be very remiss as elected officials if we're not going through these cost efficiency discussions with every department every year, particularly in light of the things that we're all dealing with, the pandemic and the like. So, great department, you do wonderful work, but we're going to be really looking hard into every budget this year to make sure that we can deliver as minimal a mill rate increase to the community and our businesses as we can. But thank you so much for all you do. I know you and your staff are doing great work, and thank you again.
Thank you.
All right. Seeing no other questions, Beth, we thank you very much for your visit with us. And it would make sense to try to coordinate something in an off-cycle explanation and whatnot. And we'll coordinate that with the mayor and see when that maybe can fit in to his plan for organizing our meetings. He does a good job there, and we'll let him keep doing that. All right, then we.
Thanks, Dave. I'll pay you later.
Yeah.
I appreciate the plug.
I had to close my agenda for a minute. So we'll move on to Arts Place since Joanne is here and has been here patiently waiting and always with a smile. Joanne, you are probably one of the longest serving program managers. I remember when we started the program, 35, 40 years ago, and you were running it then. And
this is our 30th year.
Amazing. It's just super back again and all the things you're doing. And
thank you.
You want to tell us about your budget?
Yes. Well, first I want to say I feel very fortunate to work closely with Beth and the talented library staff. She's very supportive, and it's a wonderful situation. What an extraordinary year. And what a complicated puzzle it is to predict budget numbers during a pandemic. So I want to thank all of you for your time and effort in overseeing this process. I hope everyone will share pride in Arts Place accomplishments this year. We have created a safe space in our large upstairs room offering in-person art classes. And we've received incredible words of gratitude from adult students who have told us that Arts Place has held depression at an arm's length during COVID. brought a sense of normalcy to such difficult times, sustained my sanity and self-worth. Last summer, before reopening to the public, we partnered with the library, creating the Artful Attire Challenge, which entertained and engaged the public with over 73 entries from ages 4 through adult. The Scarecrows Were Coming to Town was another popular initiative created in conjunction with the library, recreation department, the town hall, and the Chamber of Commerce. Cheshire was transformed with over 100 very clever scarecrows during October. A professional videographer filmed 15 art workshops for children, teens, and adults at Arts Place, and these online programs will be launched across the country soon. For our on-site classes, we have worked hard to ensure air safety throughout the building. Distancing required a physical rearrangement of the entire space. And initially, the upstairs room was taped to designate 9 stations for 9 students per class. Early this month, the room was rearranged to allow distance tables for 12 students. Arts Place has not had any recorded virus spread since resuming operations last September. Each Arts Place student is provided with their personally labeled box of supplies at a numbered table. Dated and timed signed records are collected following each class for contact tracing. And we sanitize and reset tables following every student visit. We have grown from 3 classes and 27 weekly students last September to 9 classes and 89 weekly students this March. Spring registration is in process, and many classes will continue through July. The last 2 weeks of July devoted solely to children's art activities, many of which will take place in Arts Place backyard. The specifics of my budget increase is a request for an additional $500 for new raised beds at Pina's Giving Garden, bordering the dog park. This year, the herb gardens were revamped to feature vegetables such as pepper, squash, tomatoes, and beans. Those were free to everyone, and the vegetables were picked and enjoyed by many last summer. This is the current state of what winter has done to our raised beds and why I'm requesting the additional funds. I'm also requesting $500 in the advertising account for 2 new Arts Day signs. That was a specific request from Cheshire Academy, as our old signs were over 20 years old, awkward, bulky, and just ugly. Current revenue for this fiscal year is $32,000. This figure is quite a departure from previous year's revenue, and I expect we will recover like the rest of the economy when it's safe to fully reopen. As you realize, typically Arts Place brings in $125,000 a year. I do estimate that the fine arts budget will close this fiscal year, returning approximately $50,000 unspent. Arts Place is working with other town departments and local groups and individuals on the Town Council Chamber Art Program. Photographic images that promote town scenes, events, and programs will be displayed in the town hall. Arts Place canvases will be paid for by the Friends of CPFA Arts Place, and we will begin the first display with 8 canvases. The first is currently on display in the town hall lobby, showing scenes from The Scarecrows Are Coming to Town. After a display of several months, these canvases will return to Arts Place to be displayed on our walls and at other events. Our art classes and activities have inspired, distracted, and entertained a weary, worried public. You can see the artistic results if you visit our special art show at the Cheshire Library called You Can't Lock Down Art, or Creativity During a Pandemic, to see just a few of the many pieces created at Arts Place. And you can also view this display at www.artsplacecheshirect.org. The art show is running in 3 stages, newly rehung every 3 weeks until May 1st. What questions do you have for me?
Well, I'll open it up if, actually, let me ask a question first, Joanne. When you have less expenses, when there are less expenses for the programs, that's generally correlates with the decrease in revenue that's there. So there is pretty much a wash on that. So as you start to ramp up, possibly more programs and maybe more people involved in them, they'll bring in more revenue, offsetting the cost. So if it was really took off and you have a lot more classes because the roaring 20s are going to come and everybody's going to get out and do different things, it would be a wash in terms of expense in the revenue, right?
Yes, that's correct. We are only using one room. You know, in the past, we've had 4 rooms, so we can run many classes concurrently.
Right. All right. Hopefully by the fall or in the not too distant future, that'll be.
This is our first children's class that
Yeah.
just began last week, 4th through 6th graders,
Mhm.
which I was glad I had a mask on because I can't believe how the tears just came into my eyes. It was so wonderful having children back at Arts Place. It's been a year.
Yeah. Good. All right. I'll open it up to others that might have questions. Mr. Talbot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Joanne, thank you so much for everything you do at Arts Place. Just a quick question. You showed the pictures of the planters, obviously in major disrepair from the winter. Is that something that we could utilize Public Works to get done for you?
Well, they've done it for the last several years and they really feel that it's just not possible any longer.
Okay.
They've been repaired and repaired.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions or comments? Joanne, you were so overwhelming. You anticipated everything we were going to say.
Thank you
All right.
all.
Well, thank you so much. And Mayor Orrs?
Yeah, Dave, thank you. And Joanne, thank you so much for what you're doing through your department as well. It is true that this is one of the few in the state that is community funded or town funded, correct?
It's the only school owned by a town in the state, and we're the envy of every other community. This Sunday, we had the statewide duck stamp judging. People were there from all over the state, Stamford, Greenwich, Fairfield. They were blown away that Cheshire owned an art school. They were jealous. It was wonderful.
Well, and that's why I bring it up, because it is something that I think we need to be very proud of. And I think I probably speak for all 9 of us on the council, that is something that we all support and do think it is a great service that we offer here in the community. And certainly with the stress and anxiety of the last year, I think people will be looking for more outlets as we start to kind of break free and be able to do more together. And so, you know, I think as we go forward, hopefully we'll be seeing more people taking advantage of the Arts Place, because I think it's a great outlet for people to learn how to paint. I would love to go. I know Tim Slocum said he came to a session once a number of years ago and loved it. And I really don't have any drawing or painting talent at all, but I know I could use a new outlet in light of the last year that we've all gone through. So I'm actually looking forward to eventually signing up for something and having an outlet in something completely new. So thank you for that. And I think we as a community should be very proud of Arts Place. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, Rob, I have taken a couple classes there, and it saved me a lot of money with Christmas presents because I gave portraits of my grandchildren to them for Christmas, which were pretty special. And I didn't think I could draw a straight line. So it can happen to you as well.
Sylvia, I suspect that there will not be any Christmas gifts or holiday gifts coming out of my paintings.
Oh,
At least not something that anyone's going to enjoy, that's for sure.
Oh, all right, very good. Well, Joanne, again, thank you very much. Just a moment, because you mentioned Mr. Holcomb. He did text me a few minutes ago that he had a family emergency that came up just at the last minute. So we're certainly hoping and wishing him well for handling that. And so he will not be in attendance tonight. So, all right, we will move on. I see Michelle has joined us, so we will move on to social services. Are you ready?
Good night, everybody, and thank you.
Good night, Joanne. Thank you again.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Good night.
Night, Beth.
Bye-bye.
All right. Michelle, are you ready? Kimball, did you want to start or just go right to Ms. Piccarello?
Yeah, I think we can go right to Michelle. Her section of the detailed budget starts when we get to the on page 143 for human services, just so you can follow along. Once we get into the line items, but yeah, I'm sure Michelle will just give an overview of the budget and how the last year has been and our plans for next year.
Yeah, good evening, everyone. It's so nice to see all of you. It seems like it's been quite some time since I've seen you. It's good to be here. I'm going to be brief. I certainly covered our accomplishments in great detail in the book that you have, so I don't feel like I need to reread those to you. I do just want to say that our department, like many others, has really responded to several crises this past year. I feel like we've constantly been putting out fires and creating programs to respond to new and emerging needs. And I also feel like long after this pandemic has lifted, we're going to be doing more of that. Certainly nationally, we're seeing an emerging mental health crisis. I think the financial stressors on households in our community are going to continue. All of our assistance programs have ramped up. Our clinical programs have ramped up, and we've even our youth service and our senior services programs have been tailored to meet the needs of our community in the pandemic. We really haven't stopped running programs except for briefly in the spring. We found a way to do most of what we do virtually to the extent that we can. I also have to just take a moment to mention that our senior center staff and what they have done to make sure that many of our community members, elderly community members, have gotten their vaccinations has been incredible. I believe there were over 200 vaccinations today at the senior center clinic. And they have gone above and beyond and worked so very hard to make sure that those clinics go smoothly. I'm super proud of everything that our department has done this year. I also want to add that we did offer a couple of assistance programs, and we were very lucky to have some very generous donations from the community, including, Lights of Hope, private donations that were able to support those assistance programs. And we were able to help, over 300 households through those programs, and continue to partner now with the United Way to do the same. So, in summary, it's been a really incredible year. I'm glad that 2020 is complete and really looking forward to moving on from all of this. So in terms of our budget, there really aren't any major changes that I need to highlight. It's pretty much status quo for this year. Unless anybody has any questions in regards to anything, there's not really a lot to report or highlight in the budget.
Right. Michelle, I would note that earlier when we met with the library director a little while ago, we did mention that you folks were working well together. Keep in touch with the seniors. And, make sure that our people who were potentially the greatest risk had a voice to talk to and somebody to connect with. So it was great for you to reach out and interconnect our departments and use the people that we had available to help with that. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. We were making, as you know, Beth probably shared with you over, thousands of phone calls. And we did get feedback from people that was something that was so helpful to them, particularly in the height of the pandemic. So that was a really important effort. And it was great that we could collaborate with another department on it.
Good. All right. Mr. Orris, I saw your hand up. Did you?
Yes, Mr. Browery, thank you. Michelle, thank you so much for all you do. I know you and your staff are working around the clock these days. You have always just been an unbelievable person in our community and rising to the occasion when anything happens. And so thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. I've seen things firsthand that you've engaged, even when you got your car wrecked. I was there that night, and it's not a laughing matter, but I understand the things that you respond to. And it's quite phenomenal. So thank you for that with you and your staff. I guess the question I would ask you is, in light of us coming out of the pandemic with all of the stress, the anxiety, I worry about our youth. I see it within my own family, the stresses that the pandemic has put on not only the parents, but certainly our children, being isolated from their friends, not being able to participate in extracurriculars. Are you comfortable staff-wise that you have what you need going forward?
So this is how I'll answer that question. I think that as we move forward, what we are going to be looking at is first a community level trauma and the way that our community has been impacted by the pandemic, and not only the youth, but the adults and our, and certainly our seniors as well. This is going to last for a long time. The stress and anxiety is not just going to go away. because we're no longer calling it a pandemic. I would anticipate continuing increases in the mental health needs of our youth in particular. We have done what we can to try to connect with area mental health providers to provide these services. What I can tell you is at this point, we can't even get private providers who have the availability to take on clients. The mental health system is just completely overwhelmed. Do I think that we could use additional staff support in the future? 100%. I do. I understand the budget constraints around these things, but I can tell you that I think there is going to be a certain point where we're not able to meet the needs of our community with the staff that we have. And in addition to that, we're not going to be able to find private providers who can pick up the slack either. The mental health treatment services in our state right now are really in a bit of crisis. And I can tell from, direct experience of people calling us saying, I've already called 12 people and they're not taking new clients. What can you do for me? Or people are on a wait list for 3 months. And that's just not acceptable in my opinion. So yes, I would see an increased need for staff in the future. And what I would love to see is somebody who could manage that clinical work as well as some additional case management for social work as well, because those needs in addition to the clinical needs are on the rise.
Thank you, Michelle. I guess I would just ask that you keep a dialogue, obviously through Sean and Arnett and us, so that we can make sure that we're serving the community as best we can in this area. It is a particular area of concern for me, as I'm sure the rest of the council. And while we are trying to minimize impacts of our budgets, this is an area that I think we need to be very concerned about. So, I'm anxious to hear more if you feel as you need additional services or you need additional staff. I think it's a conversation we all need to be having in light of what we're just coming through. So thank you again, Michelle.
All right, yes, Mr. Kimball.
Yeah, if I could just add on that note, and we will be talking more as we've begun to about American Rescue Plan funding, but that's a specific area where the dollars that are being allocated to municipalities can and are very explicitly encouraged to be used. So something I'm sure the council will want to talk about as an appropriate way to use those sort of one-time funds we talk about, are spreading some of that funding over maybe the next 3 years as the peak of this mental health crisis is upon us, possibly increasing some services, but not adding permanent positions, so to speak. So something that keep in mind, and I know Jim Jascott and I were talking just today about some of the additional information we're trying to get to bring back to you about what those funds can be used for and what their allocation amounts are. So just on that point, Chairman Orris, I think there's some opportunities there without a true budget impact to maybe enhance some of those services.
Thank you, Sean.
Other council members, Councilmember Talbot.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Michelle, I just want to echo the accolades to you and your staff from my colleagues. The work you're doing for this community is just invaluable. I just, you kind of, in the essence of time, and we appreciate that, you didn't go into some of the performance measures, but as we talked about, the mental health issues that Mr. Orris was describing, your clinical contact hours tripled year over year. The number of food vouchers provided nearly doubled. 33% increase in energy assistance. About the only thing that went down was the number of rides that you provided for seniors, and that was understandable. So we can't thank you enough for what you do, and we certainly appreciate it. Along that same line, and what got me thinking about this was, we've been talking during our meetings as this has gone on for a year about the incredible generosity of the community, and you touched upon it tonight. Have you seen an increase year over year as well in the gift account donations that you've gotten?
Yeah, I mean, this is what I'll say. I think when we have a need in this community, a particular need, if I advertise that need in any way, people rise to the occasion. I never really worry about keeping our gift account going. I do have to kind of highlight Lights of Hope because they make a very generous donation to us every year. And that sort of serves as the foundation for the gift account that, really, really sustains it, I think. But in addition to that, we have people who donate every month to us, private donations, and we're also pretty creative about getting grants and things like that. But I don't ever worry about us having a need that we need to meet and reaching out to our community and not getting a response. We will always get a response. So we even have a local restaurant owner that donates gift certificates every month to people who receive our food vouchers, which is just wonderful. And that's, that wasn't something that we asked for. He's doing that out of the goodness of his heart. This community has always risen to the occasion around those kinds of needs.
Thank you. And Mr. Orris is always very good to point out on a regular basis as we discuss this, the generosity of this community. And it's certainly one of the things that makes Cheshire such a very special place. So thank you very much, Michelle.
Mm-hmm.
Councilman Walsh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Michelle. I guess I should preface this. I am the president of Lights of Hope, but it's not anything that, as Michelle said, this community is extremely generous. And this was one of the biggest years we had in years too. And we weren't expecting it either. But, like Michelle said, when she puts a call out for support, this community comes through. The restaurant owner she mentioned has been donating these gift certificates since last year through the Lights of Hope. He said, do what you want with them. And I said, well, I'm giving them to Michelle because that's the best way to handle it. But there's a number of other people in this town who are very generous and we really appreciate that. That's what makes this town so good. We also had a pretty major storm over this summer and I had to contact Michelle about somebody in my district who was having an issue, and within minutes I'm over there and she's already there handling the situation and getting the person taken care of and everything else. And it's just amazing what you do, Michelle. I mean, I don't know how you can go 10 different places at 10 different times, but I mean, it's just amazing. And I just want to echo everybody's words about how wonderful a job you and your staff have been doing over the past year, especially because this has not been an easy year, but thank you for everything you do.
All right. Other questions, comments, kudos, anything else?
Always kudos, always.
Yes.
Only
All right.
only at the risk of piling on, I do appreciate that Councilman Walsh pointed out the storm, because it was another area that I just hope isn't lost on folks, that Michelle and her team, I mean, when we all went over there to the island to first set up the shelter, they don't miss a beat. They were working extremely long hours, temperature check. I mean, in a pandemic, temperature checking people with infrared thermometers. I mean, none of this is in the job description, and they always rise to the occasion. So I would echo and we greatly appreciate everything her office does.
All right. Very good. Well, thank you. Michelle, thank you for taking time out. I know you're so busy with other things and doing such a comprehensive job with putting your budget together and all the great things you do. Thank you. All right. Have a good night.
You too.
To go, but nobody else. Next is, we ready for planning?
We are. Yep. I think Arnett's actually going to just walk through this one briefly.
Okay. Yeah.
Pretty straightforward. On page 61 of the detail book for the actual department. I don't think it'll be a formal presentation, but really just an opportunity to answer questions. And Arnett, I think, feel free.
Yeah, this is pretty much a status quo budget. There's a couple of little and very little tweaks. There's a little bit of a decrease in the salary line because we have retirement, and a little bit of increase in the overtime with the assistance that's needed for Zoom meetings, which unfortunately are going to continue for a little while. A little more in the advertising budget, with the expectation that they'll be advertising for job positions for posting. And the only really significant increase, $2,600. We are required to the town is required to do a disaster and hazardous mitigation plan. It's a requirement by the state. COG, the Naugatuck Valley COG, is doing a regional plan for its members, and we are participating in that plan, which takes a lot of the work off of us, and it saves us some money from hiring engineers and doing all of the other things that we might have to do. And that's on page 64 in the line 5409, other contractual services. Other than that, it's a very straightforward budget, and the commissions, the Planning and Zoning Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals, again, the same, very much a status quo. Their revenue is down a little bit, mostly due to COVID, and but we've still had some important projects coming through. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
All right. Anyone have any questions or comments regarding planning and zoning and related budgets? Councilman Velber.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Arnett, and I know maybe Bill may have an answer for this, but you probably do too. Do you feel that, do we have enough, with the zoning enforcement officer, is that enough? Is there enough time in their schedule to do what they need to do? Do we have that is, because I think it's showing up as a 0.69 full-time equivalent, right?
Yeah.
Right. So,
Yeah.
So is that enough time for him to be able to do all the things that he needs to do as a zoning enforcement officer?
It appears to be. I could check with and get in more detail from Bill, but I would say that he's busy, but I don't think at this point that he's overwhelmed. It will be interesting to see what happens when we come out of the other end of this pandemic, and if it looks like that position has a little bit more responsibility or a little more volume of work, and we could take another look at it. But for now, it appears to be more than adequate.
Okay, thank you.
But I will double check with Bill.
Yeah, I would just echo that. For the most part, I think while there's been, and you probably, I'm sure the council's aware when there are sort of peaks in some of the issues that we see, sometimes you're already aware of them or we hear of them first through you. But yeah, I think so far the amount of hours that Mike works does work out pretty well. He's not the unsafe premises enforcement officer, as we could potentially change in the future if we wanted to. Right now, that's still the fire marshal. If that became a blight position in the future, that might also be something that we could take another look at, possibly changing the hours from one and shifting those responsibilities. I will say the fire marshal is incredibly busy too, so that's a little bit of an offset, especially with so much development in town. That's a good problem to have, but he's been very busy and pulled in a lot of directions. So I think that's something that's worth looking at too. And I would say the only other time that sometimes it comes up is because Mike's hours are, if he's not here past 1 o'clock, I think he's 8:30 to 1:30. If an issue comes up in the late afternoon, I mean, it's usually addressed by the next day anyway. Or if there's an emergency or something, certainly we could have someone go check something out. But usually a zoning enforcement issue is not necessarily an emergent situation. It could be addressed in the morning. So from that, just operationally and practically on a given day, it's not an issue.
All right. Any other questions or comments regarding this? All right. So noted. Thank you. Economic development.
All right, I'll take this one. So economic development is on page 70, 71, so two more pages. The real change here, so the economic development department is largely, and has been for many years, Jerry Sitko. Jerry will be retiring this late spring, early summer. And so obviously we thank him for an incredible amount of work that he's done for this community. And with that, you will see the change in the salary expectation. I've lowered that budgeted. Again, there's not a person in mind yet for that new position, but that is now budgeted at about a 14% decrease from where Jerry was with his tenure and experience. And it's worth noting here that this is one of the positions, and we'll probably talk more about this, well, either tonight or in future meetings, where there's something of a physical reorg going on that I'm proposing in this budget here in my office. If you'll recall earlier in the budget, and it's sort of outlined in the transmittal letter, I'm looking to separate the human resources function from the physical office space that the town manager's office represents. And the office space that I'd be moving human resources to is where economic development currently is in town hall. The idea being to bring economic development, and really what is a position, as everyone knows from Jerry, is also a little bit of a jack of all trades, special projects type position. Jerry, from time to time has always, predating me as well, but been assigned to things like the 325th anniversary, or helping out with the fall festival, or other items that Jerry has sort of taken on that aren't traditionally economic development related. So it's a natural fit for that position and that sort of utility person to be in my office, but also elevating the prominence, I think, of economic development and the importance from our standpoint. I like the idea of having the economic development person in this office so we can meet with, as we just did this morning, meet with prospective developers, new folks coming to town with proposals, and that I think that kind of visibility and interaction with my office really makes a lot more sense than human resources. I think human resources, especially for confidentiality and for maybe employees dealing with maybe personal issues, just as people are familiar with our physical workspace, we know, and the walls are a little thin, and it's a little such a common area here that I think it's more appropriate to have human resources in a different location, away from the sort of executive offices here. So something I'm happy to talk more about, and as we dive into those budgets, which I know we kind of postponed doing before, happy to talk more about and share more of my thoughts there. But the economic development coordinator position would stay in its own budgeted function. That's something that, for historical continuity, Jim and I kind of discussed and Jim recommended. So I'm not physically moving this into the town manager's budget. I certainly could do that, but for now, especially given that administration and finance is separate from planning and development as a functional area, we're really just talking about moving the actual office spaces and then now recruiting a new person for that position. So other than that, I think the budget is pretty status quo, as it's really a budget of a one department, one man or woman department, if you will. I'm not sure if there's any other specific questions related to the budget. Happy to answer.
I actually have one. What is the reason for the large estimated expenditure for this current fiscal year? And then it goes down to the level that you talked about for the new person.
Yeah, so with consistent with the personnel rules, as somebody with Jerry's tenure leaves, while there are caps on vacation and sick leave payouts, that estimated expenditure is for his salary this year plus any accrued payout that he's due per the rule.
Okay, I suspected that, but didn't know for sure. Just wanted to confirm that. Okay. I have to say, as liaison to Economic Development Commission and also an active member of the Chamber of Commerce, Jerry is all over, working hard with that hometown Bazzutos and business and other things. So I think we're very fortunate to have him, and hope you're able to find somebody that's got those skills plus others. He came here as a former assistant town manager from another town to come to be our economic development coordinator, and we're very fortunate to have him for these years. And the businesses he brought in, as you can read from the text of his comment just this year alone.
Absolutely, yeah. No, Jerry's been fantastic, and he will be greatly missed. And we are, I am certainly confident we're going to be able to find somebody that hopefully is able to fill those shoes to a great extent. And I'll be looking for certainly feedback from the Economic Development Commission and some input as we go forward with that process too, and the town council as well.
Good. Personally, just one person, I do think your idea of moving the physical space for the human services to have maybe a little more privacy and less, sorry, less being, sorry.
If he barks too loud, Mike'll answer.
Yeah, that's I'm afraid of.
I don't think he agrees
if
with
somebody
you.
else asks questions, I'll work on him. Does somebody else have some comments, and then we'll no, I guess not. All right, and he's quiet. All right. Anyway, I think it's been I think it's going to be a good move having the privacy in that area for the human services, and the welcome to Cheshire when you go to the town manager's office is a welcome from business people, and that's the right way to go. So, all right, other questions or comments from other council members? All right, well, I guess we're all set then. That was the last department for tonight. Were there other things that we hadn't brought up yet that we want to bring up? You know, we had left a couple off, but I'm not sure we're ready with some of that.
Yeah, some of them, I know I'm working with the chief on some of the response from the Thursday meeting with respect to overtime and salaries. I was reviewing what the chief provided me late last night. I'm not quite prepared to go through that at this moment. I know Jim Jascott and I had discussed we could go through some of the major revenue items if you'd like. Jim, are you ready to do that? Do you have what you had from our prior week's discussion? If not, is there another area that you'd like maybe to walk through while we have some time?
I personally don't have any area that I think we've left out other than ones we're not ready to bring back as departments in terms of expenditures. But yeah, if you want to review in a little more expansive view of the revenues from what we had at your presentation 2 weeks ago, we're ready if you guys are. Otherwise, we'll call it an early night and do it another night. But
yeah, I mean, typically Jim does another revenue projection forecast at the end of March, which I'm sensing probably not quite ready until we get March's full picture in. That's usually when we'll then tweak some of those numbers that the other night we were saying maybe police could go up a little bit, and that. So I'm not trying to put Jim on the spot, but if he's not ready tonight, we could probably do it at one of our next meetings.
We could certainly do a kind of high level overview if you want to just take a quick look at revenues in the short term and then circle back, later on in the process. But
knowing that we're going to have an update once you get all of March in, so mid or so April, let's do a high level overview of some areas that you want us to be aware of, and that can prompt some questions and comments, and then we can move on for the night.
So Jim, would you suggest going, so in the vertical book?
Yeah, probably the big summary book in the revenue detail begins on
kind of like 107, 108.
105 is, I guess, probably where I would start. Just a quick summary.
All right, take it away.
And so, as you know, property taxes is our probably most prominent revenue source. And probably the best thing to do is just to continue on page 106 and 107, and we'll take a look at some of the individual line items, and I'll just try to highlight, what I think is important. So, probably focusing on 107, these are our property taxes. The current tax levy, we've been using a 99.2% collection rate for some time now. And that seems to be working out well. We've had the good fortune of having one of the highest collection rates in the state. We've had in excess of 99.7% for a very long time. I want to say in excess of 5 years. It dipped a little bit this past fiscal 20 to 99.65. And that was a little bit COVID related. We did not do a lien assignment last year for the first time in many years. And I think that was just to give a little relief to our taxpayers, in addition to some of the other relief programs that were offered in the way of grace periods on the payment of their taxes and interest rate reductions last year, if I recall. But looking forward, we were projecting at least a 99.65, and quite frankly, I think we're going to get back up to where we were historically at in excess of 99.75 or even higher. We do plan on a lien sale this spring. We're in the process of organizing that right now. So I think, this does buffer us and helps us generate the surplus that we rely on each year to help mitigate the tax increase by using some of the surplus. So using, again, I think a rather conservative collection rate under the circumstances, and I'm optimistic that this year we're gonna see another stellar collection rate once again. Supplemental motor vehicle taxes. I just want to point out there that we were kind of in this fiscal year, we were down about $45,000 from what was budgeted. And, quite frankly, I'm going to blame everything on COVID, but, I think we didn't have a lot of new car sales or something. And that's, it's really, supplemental motor vehicle taxes are really hard number to predict. We do rely on trends, and that's what I used going forward in budgeting the fiscal 22 number. So, I think things do tend to rebound a little bit, and I'm optimistic that that's an appropriate number going forward. Prior year interest in liens. You could see the history there a little bit. We did budget in this fiscal year $250,000 for prior year levies and $225,000 interest in lien fees. The interest in lien fees have been pretty consistent, but the prior year levies are taking a hit this fiscal year, probably mostly because of the settlements we've had on going back all the way to the 2018 reval. And frankly, when we were doing the budget last year and I was putting some of these numbers together, I guess I envisioned a lot more of those cases settling out before the end of last fiscal year. But with the courts being closed and the extensions required because of COVID, a lot of those got pushed off. And as you know, we still have half a dozen cases that are in the process of being closed out yet. Going forward, I think we're going to be hopefully back in a more normal situation with historic levels of prior year levies and interest and lien fees. So just if anybody has any questions as I go along, just shout out. I was going to move on to the pilots on page 109.
We're not shy.
Okay. A lot of these state grants, this is the second year in a biennial budget, and I don't expect a lot of changes here. They're pretty consistent with the prior year, with the exception, and Sean, I don't know if we've gotten any additional information, but I know there was consideration of a pilot program enhancement. And I don't know if we've gotten any more information at this point, but certainly it's something that we're going to follow up on.
Yeah, we won't. Unfortunately, we probably won't know for sure until they negotiate the final budget. A lot of municipalities, which there are many that would stand to benefit from that increase more greatly than even we would, will be pushing for some sort of certainty or at least budgeting in their adopted budget. But, for absolute certainty, it'll probably be the nth hour of June 5th or 6th. But, I think there's that 700 and I don't have right in front of me, $39,000, I think, of pilot increase that we're, I think, very likely to get if that bill and the strong support that it has is successfully worked into the final budget. But at this point, I don't have anything more than we had as of at least a week and a half, 2 weeks ago.
So something we'll just have to keep in our back pocket for now and see if there are any more developments in the short term. A couple other things I just want to mention. The Cheshire Housing Authority, we did see a little bit uptick beginning this year. We're projecting 40,000. Historically, we've been more or less in the uptick started in 20, but we had historically budgeted this around 32 or 33,000. But our understanding from the Housing Authority that, I don't know whether they have more units or what, but there's certainly an increase there that we should see going forward. South Central Regional Water Authority, that is a mill rate sensitive item. So, that might change a little bit as we adjust the mill rate down. I think most of the other revenues on that page, with the exception of telecom property tax, we did see a pretty huge increase this year in the estimated revenues. We budgeted 142,000, and we're told now that we're going to exceed 240,000. So that was a nice surprise. That's another one of those revenues that's really hard from year to year to predict. I think AT&T was a big part of that, and I don't know if there's quite a bit of equipment maybe over on Higgins Road, but again, that was nice to see that uptick. That's all based on a pilot program where I think that equipment gets depreciated based on perhaps a different rate that we might use for our other personal property. So again, it's a little bit hard to predict from year to year, but I did increase it for fiscal 22 somewhat, probably on the conservative side. Maybe that's something I could take another look at if we can increase that a little bit more based on what we ultimately did receive this year.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
Jim, quick question, but on the telecom property tax, Sean, your email today regarding the AT&T tower at the soccer fields, would that coming online and them more utilizing that, will that impact this number at all? I mean, I don't know how that works, but I guess question, if they start using it more and bringing other companies on there, would that potentially increase this number?
So not that number is my understanding. It's a different section that they have to pay us now. If there is equipment on there and a carrier, there are additional fees that we will get directly from the tower operator. These telecom ones are a different calculation due to.
Okay, so these are pilot, that won't affect the pilot part of it.
Wouldn't be a pilot, right? It's not a pilot revenue, but it is,
Right.
and I'm trying to get some of that
income.
information now that we just were notified officially yesterday. There should be an increase to the revenue from that. I'm trying to get a handle on what that would be. And as we know, there could be another co-locator going onto that same tower. So that's something that I know when the council embarked on that tower project, we were hoping for a lot sooner than now, but nonetheless, very great to have that additional revenue starting to come in. So we are very curious to see what that number is, and I'll be giving you hopefully some more information in the coming days.
Yeah, and you'll see those revenues in miscellaneous revenue, which we'll be getting to that shortly. Page 111 is the town departments which we did go over a little bit last week, specifically the building and the town clerk revenues. Again, typically at the end of March, I take a good look at what our 9-month history is. So hopefully by the first week in April, I'll have even better trend information as to where things are projected to land this year. I will say that, building permits particularly are really hard to project because based on timing, whether you get a big permit in June or July is going to make a difference between, each of those fiscal years. But certainly going to take another look at that. And those revenues have been very strong. I'm kind of got that conservative accountant in me. And, I do take a strong look at the 5-year trends to get a better handle of, what can we really expect, if this bubble bursts at some point as far as, higher interest rates or something like that, that might affect the number of permits and real estate transactions. I don't know if there was, there was a lot of fluctuation. Obviously, we heard from fine arts today. We heard from the library. Senior activities and youth activities were significantly influenced by, COVID. I think they're really making strong headwinds as, getting back into some sense of normalcy. But you can see the trends there as far as what were budgeted. They might not have been quite as high as what they were historically. And, hopefully they'll get back to what they were at their historical levels. The police department, I will say, that's account 104304. They've had a really good year this year with and I think we did talk about that last week as well. A large part of that is, I believe, gun permits and probably even more so special duty car rentals, which there was a lot of activity. Again, I'm a little cautious going forward. I know I spent a lot of time with the department that handles those collections to see what they thought, again, taking a look at 5-year trends, what we might see going forward, but perhaps there's an opportunity to push that number a little bit, but I'm usually cautious about doing that. Moving on to page 113, town grants. A lot of these grants are pretty status quo. I think the one thing I might focus on there are the grants town, which is those are our miscellaneous town grants. That's the 104410 account. We budgeted 48,000 for this fiscal year, fiscal 21. We're projecting 163,000. Some of that are COVID related grants that were for expenses that were incurred in fiscal 20, but we were not advised to record the revenue because it was received quite a few number of months after the end of our last fiscal year. Our auditors advised us to book that in this fiscal year. So some of that is COVID money. Some of that is projected FEMA money on Storm Isaiah, which we're in the process of applying for those funds right now. Going forward, we're kind of taking those larger grants out of the equation, back down to 29,000. I'll have to take a look and see exactly why that dipped a little bit, even from what we budgeted this year at 48,000. I don't recall what the reason for that was. And I will say that, we did get quite a few more COVID grants, but they're ones that we're planning to put in a special revenue fund, so that we don't distort the general fund revenue and expenses associated with those grants to any large degree. Miscellaneous town, investment income is another one that's hard to predict. We budgeted 300,000 this year. I'm projecting 200,000, based on lower interest rates than we were looking at a year ago. And I can tell you that's probably a real good number. Unfortunately, we're going to see, an unfavorable variance in that account this year. We did spend a lot of time looking, the 215 that I put in for fiscal 22 is based on the rates we're seeing now. So to the extent that anything upticks, that's probably going to be our favor. I just don't know how much we want to push that, before we finish up this budget process. It's something we could take another look at.
And just to sort of highlight the sensitivity of that, I mean, just 2 years ago, that number was 900,000.
Correct.
Budget.
Yep.
I know we hit 745.
743.
743. But that, as the council recalls from last year's budget, was sort of a double whammy where we had to account for the interest rate falling, of which from a budget to budget standpoint was about a $600,000 drop plus. So,
we're issuing bonds or selling bonds tomorrow, so we're going to get an influx of $14 million, and obviously we do invest that in even in long-term CDs to the extent we can to take advantage of better rates. But we take that all into consideration. So even with what I projected at 215, we did take into consideration that we're going to get those bond proceeds. So the sewer assessments, that's been $50,000 for the longest time, and I really think we've kind of hit the end of the line with that almost. There haven't been a lot of new sewer connections in recent years, and so I don't even think we're going to hit our 50 this year. It's possible if somebody pays off an account early, but there really hasn't been much coming online, and I haven't heard of a potential for that going forward. I suppose, if there are subdivisions that might have the potential for sewer hookups, that could pick up a little bit again. But I think we did check on that to see if there's that potential, and we weren't comfortable at this point. Miscellaneous revenues. This year we're having a really good year with miscellaneous revenues. I believe a lot of that, there were several reasons for that. I think the biggest one was the Board of Education canceled encumbrances. So from fiscal 20, and that could be, a sign of the COVID situation, but they are projecting to return a large amount of unused purchase orders, and that was part of that increase to 625,000 over the 395,000 that was budgeted. I know we did have, perhaps unfortunately, a lot of workers' comp claims this year. Those worker comp reimbursements do go into miscellaneous revenue. So that was part of it, but may come back to haunt us on the other side, on the expense side eventually, when our worker comp claims are on the higher end. those are the two things that come to mind. I'll have to take another look. We always have good collections on our suspense list. That's another one of the big items that goes into this account. Police special duty. This year we're looking at, a little bit more than we were projecting. We had a good year in fiscal 20. Fiscal 21's looking strong. And, we budgeted fiscal 22 at 115,000, which again, I do take a look at, a 5-year history usually when I project out. But hopefully that will continue to stay strong. Water pollution control, that 650,000 is a transfer from the water pollution control fund. It's predominantly to offset debt service that's being paid directly by the general fund. So as you know, the water pollution control fund does pay debt service directly out of their budget as well. And I think we did talk recently about, maybe taking another look at that. If I recall, we're paying, or the WPCD will be paying about 75% of their sewer-related debt service, a little lower than fiscal 19 and 20, which I believe was up around 82 or 83%, because we had that windfall from the prison settlement for the back billing on the meter that wasn't functioning correctly. Excavation fees. There is a special revenue fund that is replenished every year by, I think, the aprons on driveways, from what I recall. And so there's monies there that we decided to, use kind of on a consistent basis. I can't remember exactly how much is in that fund right now. It's probably between 100,000 and 200,000, but I think the thought there was we didn't want to use it all in one year, but there's always that potential. Page 115, education grants. If you look at the total there at the bottom for all those grants, you can see that it's pretty consistently all at about 9.8 million for what was budgeted in 21, what's projected, and what we're projecting for next year. And at this point, I'm not aware of any big fluctuations there. Finally, page 117. The miscellaneous education revenue, in total, we're going to stay flat with last year's budget. It looks like we might be getting a little bit less in birth to 3 monies this year from what we did budget, because there was a little loss of programming last year due to COVID. But otherwise, we're going to stay with consistent with the budget from fiscal 21 to 22. And then finally, general fund equity. As you know, we used 2 million of surplus last year to budget last year's budget. We did have a large surplus, and that surplus in fiscal 20 was in large part due to the COVID close down and closing of our programs, including Board of Ed programs. So that allowed us to use a bigger chunk of that surplus to balance last year's budget. Sean put in $1 million for this year, cutting it back down to a more normal level. And the only other thing I'll point out is there was an additional appropriation during the year for the Storm Isaiah related tree damage. So that's why you can see the actual estimated revenues was 2,180,000, because there was an additional $180,000 appropriation for that storm damage, which was paid from the fund balance. We are expecting grant money for that now that storm was approved for FEMA funding. So that will offset that use of fund balance and hopefully show up in this year's surplus. That's kind of what I have for right now. And I think there's a number of these we want to come back and sharpen our pencil a little bit, and I'll have a little bit better information in the coming weeks. And then too, not only the pilot, I think the 730,000 that we're a little bit unsure of at this point due to its status in the legislature, but there's also the stimulus funds that are in the millions that I'm still we still don't really have any good guidance as to how that's going to get distributed or when it's going to get distributed. And I'm going to make some calls to the state probably tomorrow just to see if I can get any more information on that. And that's all I have for you right now.
Are there questions and comments? I appreciate the update, and I know obviously we'll have more of an update as we're moving along, but are there questions or comments from council members? All right. Again, this is not the last time for sure that we'll hear about revenues. It's a major factor in determining what the mill rate ends up being. So, all right. Mr. Kimball, are we caught up now with?
I think we are.
Good. All right. So we are on track to hear from Public Works on Thursday.
Correct.
Water pollution
And
control.
water pollution, yep.
Who's the other one? Building. No, not building. Public property. Okay.
Right.
All right. Well, everybody, we get out a little bit early.
Nice.
Dave, if I get a question, I know I don't have the schedule in front of me. When is the Board of Ed discussion? Do you know?
I got that right here. That's next Thursday, the 6th.
Okay, perfect.
So this Thursday is Public Works, water pollution, public buildings. And then next Tuesday is education. Tuesday the 6th. I said Thursday.
Yeah.
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Tuesday the 6th.
Tuesday the 6th. Right. And then we have another public information session and the last department's recreation and pool next Thursday the 8th. And then we have deliberations and updates. All right. Mayor Orris, I'll hand the meeting back to you.
Not much left to do other than to call for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Burry. Second, Mr. Veliver. All in favor?
I think Gina seconded. I saw her hand up.
We are adjourned. The motion passed unanimously, those that are here. Gina, thank you.